The first thing he noticed was that the sky over the impact zone had stopped behaving like a sky. It didn't flicker or burn or tear the way old disaster footage usually promised. It simply refused to settle into a single shade, as if reality had become indecisive. Pale bands of color drifted through the upper atmosphere like someone testing paint samples and forgetting to choose one. His salvage drone, a boxy little machine named Barrel because it once beeped in a way that reminded him of regret, hovered beside him and emitted a concerned noise that he had long since translated as, "This is above my pay grade, please stop bringing me here." "Relax," he told it while stepping over a half-buried slab of alloy that used to be part of something expensive. "Worst case, we sell whatever's left and retire early." Barrel spun in a slow circle, projecting a scan overlay that immediately turned into static. Yeah, he added. "Very helpful. You should put that on your resume." The wreckage ahead was not scattered so much as arranged incorrectly, like a structure had tried to remember how to fall apart and gotten distracted halfway through. Sections of hull floated a few centimeters above the ground, defying the polite agreement gravity usually enforced. Heat shimmered without fire. Somewhere deeper in the ruin, something was still breathing in a rhythm that didn't match any known engine cycle. He had worked salvage long enough to recognize when something wanted to be left alone. This place did not just want that, it insisted on it. Naturally, that was exactly what made it valuable. "All right," he muttered. "We're just looking. No touching anything that looks like it might rewrite the laws of physics. Standard procedure." Barrel beeped once. "That wasn't a question," he said. The response was another beep, slightly more judgmental. He moved forward anyway, boots crunching over material that alternated between solid and almost solid, depending on how closely he paid attention. His suit's diagnostic kept flickering warnings that politely escalated from "unusual readings detected" to "you are currently in a bad idea." "Thanks," he said to the suit. "Love your optimism." That was when he heard it. Not a crash, not a collapse, not the dramatic noises salvagers like to brag about later in bars. This was quieter. A sound like someone exhaling after holding their breath for too long under too many stars. He followed it. The corridor, if it could still be called that, opened into a fractured chamber where light behaved as though it had forgotten how to travel in straight lines. And there, half buried under a segment of curved metal that looked like it had been shaped by a very confused mathematician, was her. At first, his brain tried to file her under survivor, which would have been normal if she hadn't had ears that extended upward and outward in long, elegant arcs, subtly shifting as if listening to frequencies he could not even pretend to imagine. Her face was human enough to trigger recognition, but not enough to grant comfort. Like someone had taken the idea of a human and adjusted it slightly to see what would happen. Her eyes opened before he reached her. That alone almost made him stop walking. "Okay," he said cautiously because silence felt like surrender. "Hi, hello, friendly salvage operator here. No intention of whatever is happening to your ship." She studied him for a moment that felt longer than it should have, then spoke. The language was not sound so much as structure, like meaning being assembled in real time. His suit translator lagged behind for a second, then caught up with a hesitant approximation. "Do not approach the core," she said. He paused, then looked around, then back at her. "Which core?" he asked, "because I feel like that's a multiple-choice question in this place." Her expression didn't change, but one of her ears twitched slightly, which he decided to interpret as stress. "The central containment unit," she clarified. He nodded slowly. "Right, and where is that?" A distant metallic groan answered him, as if the wreck itself had overheard and was sighing in disappointment. She closed her eyes briefly. "You are standing within 12 meters of it." "Ah," he said. "That explains the architectural nightmare vibes." Barrel beeped again, this time urgently, projecting a red warning box that simply read, "No." "Yeah, I see it," he told the drone. "Not helpful, Barrel. We've been over this." The alien woman shifted slightly, wincing. Only then did he notice the restraint field around her waist, fractured and pulsing weakly, like it was arguing with itself about whether she was still allowed to exist. Whatever had brought her down here had not intended for her to leave. "Can you walk?" he asked. "I can survive," she replied. "That's not what I asked." A pause, then yes. "Great," he said. "Because I've had enough dead ends today to qualify as a philosophy lecture." He carefully lifted the debris pinning her. It resisted for half a second, then yielded with a sound like reality giving up on paperwork. She staggered when freed, and he caught her arm before she could fall, immediately noticing that her skin temperature was inconsistent, warm in places, cool in others, as if her body hadn't fully decided on a single timeline. "You're going to owe me a very detailed explanation," he said. "I do not owe you anything," she replied. He nodded. "Fair, but I'm still going to ask." She glanced toward the deeper wreckage. "You should leave." "Already planning to," he said. "Just with you included. I assume that's fine." Her ears tilted slightly backward. He was starting to think they were more expressive than most human eyebrows. "You do not understand what is inside," she said. He adjusted his grip on her arm and looked toward the darkness she was warning him away from. "I understand that every job I've ever taken has started with someone saying that sentence. That is not reassuring. It's honest," he replied, "which is basically my brand." Beryl floated closer, scanning the corridor ahead. Its projection flickered again, then briefly displayed a diagram that looked like it had been drawn by a mildly distressed octopus. "Yeah, I don't know what that means either," he said to it, "but I appreciate the enthusiasm." The alien woman watched the drone. "Your machine is afraid." "It's not afraid," he said. "It's just professionally anxious." As if offended by the understatement, Beryl emitted a long, rising tone that could only be described as emotional disagreement. A low vibration rolled through the wreckage. Not a tremor, more like something large adjusting its attention. Her gaze sharpened instantly. "It is waking." He exhaled slowly. "That sounds bad." "It is." "Cool," he said. "Love clarity in a crisis." She grabbed his wrist suddenly. Her grip was precise, not panicked but deliberate. "If you have removed anything from the core chamber." "I may have gently relocated some items," he admitted. Her expression shifted for the first time. Not anger. Something closer to resignation, like she had just watched a predictable disaster complete its schedule ahead of time. "You have started a cascade." He blinked. "I feel like that would have been on a warning sign somewhere." "There were no signs," she said. "Yeah," he replied. "That tracks." Behind them, something in the wreck shifted again, and this time the sound carried a pattern like it was learning how to speak in structural collapse. Beryl hovered between them and the corridor, projecting a final warning. "Run." He looked at the alien woman, at the fractured containment field around her, at the impossible geometry of the wreck breathing behind them. "Well," he said, "I was planning on lunch later, but I suppose we can reschedule." She didn't understand the joke, but she did understand urgency. "Move," she said, and together they did. They ran before the corridor finished deciding whether it was still a corridor. The wreckage behind them shifted again, and this time it did not bother pretending it was structural failure. Panels folded inward like reluctant pages. Struts bent at angles that made the salvage operator briefly reconsider whether geometry was still something he wanted to believe in. "Okay," he said while sprinting, boots slamming against surfaces that alternated between solid and "please, don't rely on me emotionally. I just want to confirm something." The alien woman kept pace beside him with unsettling efficiency, her long ears angled backward like they were catching turbulence in reality itself. "If this is about your survival chances," she replied, "they are decreasing." "Not that," he said. "More like, is this normal for you people, because I feel like I should have been given a brochure." "It is not normal," she said. "It is catastrophic." "Right," he nodded. "Just checking we're on the same page emotionally." Beryl floated behind them. emitting a continuous tone that had started as warning and slowly evolved into what sounded suspiciously like regret. A section of ceiling tried to become floor. He didn't ask questions anymore after that. Questions felt expensive. They reached the outer rupture of the vessel where the hull had split open into a jagged aperture, revealing the half-ruined landscape outside. The sky was still wrong, still those indecisive colors shifting like a nervous artist. The man skidded to a stop. "Great news," he said. "Exit's right there. Bad news." A distant vibration cut him off. The alien woman stepped forward, staring out. "They are here," she said. He squinted. Who is they in this context? Because I've already had a very full day of undefined antagonists. As if answering politely, space answered first. Shapes began to appear above the wreckage field. Not ships in the traditional sense. He had seen ships. He had repaired ships. He had once sold a ship that legally shouldn't have existed. But these things behaved like ships after they had been edited by someone who didn't fully understand consent. They were geometric inconsistencies, angles that did not resolve, edges that suggested other edges existed nearby but refused to confirm it. "Oh," he said quietly. "Okay, that's new." Beryl emitted a sound that translated loosely into, "I would like to go home now." The alien woman's expression tightened. "Do not let them stabilize focus on us." "Stabilize what now?" She grabbed his wrist again. "Run." "Already doing that," he said. "Would prefer slightly more information per unit of running." They bolted across fractured ground as the first pulse of interference hit. It wasn't an explosion. It was worse, an edit. The terrain behind them briefly turned into something else, a version of itself where they had never existed. The air where they had been standing a second ago folded neatly into absence. He stumbled. "Did we just get unhappened?" "Yes," she said. "Cool, cool, cool, cool. I hate that." Beryl zipped ahead, projecting a path that immediately rerouted itself 3 times in panic. The salvage operator pointed. "Left." The alien woman did not question it. That alone made him trust her more than he liked. They slid into a narrow fissure between wreck segments just as another distortion wave passed overhead. The world outside briefly forgot what direction meant. Inside the fissure, things were slightly less immediately hostile. "Okay," he said, catching his breath. "I'm going to assume those are the people you were telling me not to annoy." "They are not people," she replied. "That feels like a technicality I'm not emotionally prepared to debate." She leaned against the fractured metal wall, steadying herself. The restraint field around her waist flickered again, weaker now. He noticed for the first time that it was not just failing, it was being overwritten. "They are retrieval constructs," she said. "They follow probability trails left by unstable containment events." He nodded slowly. "So space detectives, but meaner. If that helps you understand." "It does," he said. "Unfortunately." Beryl floated between them, projecting a small diagram of what looked like a screaming circle. "Yeah," he told it. "We're all feeling like that, buddy." Outside, the constructs moved again. The fissure walls trembled as if reality was testing whether it could politely remove them. The alien woman looked at him. "You removed something from the core." He held up his hands. "In my defense, it looked removable." "That is not a defense. It's at least a reason." She closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, her pupils were slightly misaligned, as if her vision was arguing with itself. "The core contains a folded event," she said, "a structure that exists in all outcomes simultaneously." He blinked. "That sounds like a paperwork nightmare." "It is worse than that." "Hard to imagine," he muttered. She continued, ignoring him with the efficiency of someone used to survival. "When you disturbed it, you separated one instance from its constraints." "So I broke it," he said. "You initiated divergence," she corrected. Which is a fancy way of saying I broke it with better vocabulary. A distant pressure wave passed through the fissure. Dust rose in slow motion, then forgot what direction down was supposed to be. Beryl beeped urgently. "Yeah, I see it," he said. "We are currently in the part of the situation where things get metaphorical. The alien woman pushed off the wall. "We must reach your vessel." "My what?" "The machine you arrived in." He frowned. "You mean my barely functional salvage shuttle that I've been emotionally blackmailing into flight for 3 years?" "Yes." "Ah," he said. "That one still flies. Debatable, but I appreciate your optimism." They moved again, slipping through collapsing geometry. The constructs outside were closer now, their presence bending the edges of perception like heat haze made of intent. At one point, the salvage operator paused mid-run. "Question." "No," she said immediately. "That feels like you didn't hear it." "I did." "Still asking." She sighed in a way that suggested she was reconsidering the entire species of humans. "What?" "If those things follow probability trails," he said, "does that mean if I make enough bad decisions I can confuse them?" She stared at him for half a second. "That is, not how I would use that principle." "Not a no, though." Beryl emitted what could only be interpreted as encouragement, which was concerning. The alien woman grabbed his arm again. "Move." They burst out of the fissure into open ground just as the constructs attempted to resolve their position. For a moment, space hesitated. Then everything became very interested in where they were standing. They ran faster. His shuttle came into view like a tired promise sitting half-buried in fractured terrain. It looked exactly like something that had survived too many arguments with physics and won out of sheer stubbornness. He pointed. "That's home." "It is small," she said. "It's efficient," he replied. "It is dented. It has personality. It is leaking." "That's ambience." Beryl rushed ahead, already interfacing with the shuttle's external port. The hatch flickered, then opened reluctantly, like it was being asked to participate in something it did not approve of. They climbed inside just as the constructs reached the edge of resolution behind them. The cockpit lights flickered on. The shuttle made a noise that sounded like judgment. He sat down, slapped the console. "Okay, old girl. We're going to need immediate escape velocity and a miracle, preferably in that order." The alien woman looked around. "This is your vessel. It has character. It is coughing. That's just its way of saying hello." Outside, reality bent again. The constructs began to converge. Beryl displayed a single word, "Go." He grinned despite everything. "Finally, something we agree on." And he hit the launch sequence. The shuttle did not so much launch as it negotiated with gravity, until gravity gave up out of frustration. The cockpit shook hard enough that the salvage operator briefly reconsidered every decision that had led him to owning something that still used analog vibration dampeners. "Okay," he said, gripping the controls. "Good news is we're airborne." A pause. "Bad news is I think we're being chased by math." Outside the viewport, the constructs had fully resolved now. They no longer looked like ships or machines. They looked like outcomes, predictions given physical form, trying very hard to enforce consistency on a universe that had clearly not signed the agreement. The alien woman stood behind him, bracing herself against the frame. Her long ears were angled forward now, locked onto something he could not perceive. "They will not stop," she said. "That's usually the vibe I get from bureaucracies too," he replied. "So I feel weirdly prepared." Beryl hovered between them and the console, projecting multiple overlapping warnings, all of which had degraded into what looked like abstract art titled, "We are going to die in a scientifically impressive way." The salvage operator adjusted trajectory manually. "All right, space math cops, let's see if you can handle bad piloting." He shoved the shuttle into a hard lateral burn. The universe immediately protested. Space outside bent, not violently, but insistently, like it was trying to correct his spelling. The constructs followed, slicing through probability paths that rewrote themselves faster than he could process. The alien woman stepped closer. "You are destabilizing their predictive lock." "Yeah," he said, teeth clenched. "That's the idea. I'm very good at being a problem. That is not a skill most pilots advertise. I specialize in niche markets." The shuttle lurched again. A warning flashed, structural reality integrity compromised. He stared at it. That feels like something we should have checked before takeoff. Beryl beeped once dryly. Not helpful, he muttered. The alien woman suddenly reached forward, placing her hand over a secondary control node he had never used and honestly thought was decorative. "You will need to stop thinking in straight trajectories," she said. "I've never thought in straight trajectories in my life," he replied. "It's kind of my brand." "Good," she said. The console lit up under her touch. For a moment, the shuttle responded not to input but to intention. The constructs closed in. And then the artifact happened. He felt it before he saw it. A pressure shift in meaning itself. The cargo bay behind them, where he had very responsibly stashed the slightly cursed impossible object earlier, stopped behaving like a place. The object was no longer contained, or rather, containment had stopped being a concept it respected. He said, "I think your thing is doing the thing again." "My thing," she corrected, "is not supposed to be out of containment." "That is also my preference for most things in life," he said. The alien woman turned sharply. For the first time her calm broke, not into panic but into calculation pushed past safe limits. "It is responding to pursuit pressure," she said. "Great," he replied. "So it's emotionally reactive. That's just what we needed. A universe-sensitive mood ring." Beryl emitted a tone that translated loosely as, "This is the worst day of my mechanical existence." The artifact's influence spread through the shuttle systems. Displays began showing outcomes instead of readings. Every route they might take appeared simultaneously, layered like transparent arguments. The constructs outside paused. For the first time they hesitated. "They are losing certainty," she said. "That's good, right?" he asked. "It is dangerous," she corrected. "Uncertainty makes the field unstable." "Everything is unstable," he said. "Have you met this shuttle?" The artifact pulsed again, and then it spoke not in words but in resolved possibility. The shuttle jumped, not forward, not sideways, not even incorrectly in a normal sense. It jumped through versions of itself. For a brief moment, he saw 3 alternate cockpits layered over each other. One where he never left the salvage yard, one where the alien woman never survived the wreck, and one where the constructs had already finished deciding everything. Then it snapped back. Silence followed. The engines hummed in a way that suggested they had questions but were choosing professionalism instead. The alien woman exhaled slowly. "It is learning." "Of course it is," he said, "because why wouldn't it?" Beryl projected a single symbol that looked like resignation shaped into geometry. Outside, the constructs were no longer pursuing in formation. They were recalculating in real time, their shapes flickering as their certainty degraded. "They can't lock onto us," he realized. "No," she said, "not while the event is unbound." He looked toward the cargo bay access. "So we just put it back." Her expression tightened. "It cannot be contained again in the same way." "Fantastic," he said. "Love irreversible problems. Very modern." A long silence passed between them, filled only by the shuttle's tired systems trying to decide whether to continue existing. Then she said, "There is another option." He immediately shook his head. "I don't like how you said that. You will like it less if I explain it poorly." "Try me." She stepped closer, ears slightly lowered now, not in fear but in focus. "The event does not want to be singular," she said. "It is a convergence of outcomes, a forced unity that should not exist." "Okay," he said slowly. "And the solution is what? Negotiation. Because I'm not great at diplomacy with physics crimes. We distribute it." Beryl beeped sharply. He frowned. "Distribute how?" "To all possible trajectories," she said. "We let it resolve into harmless probability instead of concentrated instability." He stared at her. "That sounds like exploding a problem across the universe." "Yes. That is the worst yes I have ever heard. It is the only one that prevents pursuit from stabilizing." He leaned back in his seat. "So let me get this straight. We take the universe's worst multi-dimensional headache and spread it out so thin nobody can sue us later." "Yes." He considered that, then sighed. "Honestly, That sounds like something I would approve in a meeting just to leave early. Beryl emitted what could only be interpreted as reluctant agreement. The constructs outside began reforming again, more carefully this time. Learning. They did not have much time. "All right," he said. "Let's do the irresponsible cosmic surgery option. But I want it on record that I was not trained for this." "You were not trained for anything," she replied. "That's not fair," he said. "I'm very good at improvising." She almost smiled at that. Almost. They moved together. The alien woman interfaced directly with the artifact through the cargo link, her hands steady despite the way the shuttle trembled around them. The salvage operator rerouted power, stabilizing fields he absolutely did not understand, while loudly insisting that this counted as understanding. Beryl synchronized with both of them, projecting a final alignment pattern that looked like a decision made by a nervous god. Outside, the constructs committed. Inside, the artifact opened. Not like a door. Like every possible version of a door, remembering it had always been open. For a moment, everything became very simple. Then it scattered. The sensation was not explosion. It was distribution. Like a story being told into too many ears at once until no single listener could hold all of it. The pursuit collapsed instantly. The constructs froze, flickered, and then dissolved into meaningless probability noise. Without a single target to stabilize around, they ceased to function as intention, and then they were gone. The shuttle drifted in quiet space. No alarms, no bending physics. Just engine hum and residual static like the universe clearing its throat. He blinked. "So, we won." The alien woman lowered her hand slowly. "We prevented collapse." "That feels like a yes but emotionally complicated kind of win." "It is accurate." Beryl emitted a soft tone that might have been relief or simply exhaustion. He leaned back in his seat, exhaling hard. "I'm going to be honest. I thought this job was going to involve more salvage and less existential editing of reality." She looked at him. "You adapted." "Yeah," he said. "I hate that I did, but yeah." A long silence settled. The artifact was gone now. Not destroyed, not contained, just no longer singular enough to be dangerous. The